Hello, and welcome to the readings from Beacon, the Sam Houston State Review panel featuring Colton Ammerman, Audrey Lack, and Andrew Huffmeyer. The English department and the undergraduate literary community of Sam Houston State University focuses on literary developments of the past. In order to be better writers in the future, these panelists have been equipped as current writers with the tools for pursuing new and innovative artistic developments. The literary journal Beacon Sam Houston State Review is the culmination of their journey. This presentation gathers representatives of the best and brightest creative writers who have been published in the fall 2020/spring 2021 issue of Beacon. Our first panelist is Colton Ammerman. Colton Ammerman is a senior at Sam Houston State University who studies English and creative writing with plans to pursue an MFA in the same field. When he's not doing schoolwork or tutoring students at the Writing Center, he obsessively reads through his Stephen King collection. He also likes to make things up and write them down.
Creative writing is a snapshot of the current attitudes, worldviews, and culture of the author, but it also serves as a platform for self-expression. By writing creatively, the author partakes in a therapeutic exercise that offers an outlet to tackle uncomfortable subjects. Horror authors, for instance, may use fantastical situations or creatures to cope with the fear of death or the unknown. This has been the case for myself, where I use creative writing to explore anxiety, depression, and greater existential fears. Whether the monster of the story represents a deeper, more human concern or simply a vague angst, the most important part of the process is to translate these emotions through clear, concise, and captivating narratives. To achieve this, a tight-knit community is required that allows the creative writer to immerse themselves among others of varying worldviews, cultural and social identities, skill sets, and subject matter. There should also be a platform in which the writer can showcase the ultimate synthesis of their literary growth. The English department in Beacon magazine at Sam Houston State University offers both to the budding creative writer. Through a rich and varied selection of literature courses, we, being the writers at Sam Houston State University, have been influenced during our undergraduate study by Middle Eastern, African, European, ancient, and American texts, introduced to us by a knowledgeable faculty. It has allowed us to adopt insightful themes into our own writing and learn from those who came before us. Through the creative writing program, we have had the opportunity to meet in small workshops to help each other with our writing goals. Because of this, the quality of my own writing has grown exponentially. It's given me a better understanding of my strengths and weaknesses and where I must focus in order to deliver the strongest story I can. And exemplifying the final stage of the writer's journey here at SAM is the opportunity to submit at the Beacon Undergraduate Literary Magazine. It offers valuable insight into the world of publication and is indicative of the skills required to take a piece of writing from the composition, polishing to publication. So, as an example of how Sam Houston State University can lead students like myself to accomplish our writing goals, I'd like to share a poem and an excerpt from a fiction piece, both written using my acquired skills. A Book's Thought on Nationalism, a poem. Boys whisper, powerful ministers answer. Be creative, creativity fuels the giant. Everyone gets out of the way when the giant comes through. Build anything, control the weather, build a city on the moon. The young captured him and tortured him with electricity. He said, I only regret that I have only but one life to lose for my country. There's a great test coming, harder than all the other tests. The giant, he possesses his hands and heart and bones. We went into the forest. The boys destroy the dogs, rabbits, the birds, the lake, and others I've forgotten. The Spider God, fiction excerpt. He rode east after the slaughter. The lawmen, who'd survived the massacre in Raven Gulch, had pursued him for 3 days and 50 miles outside the county's borders. With all the sheriff and most of their friends locked in rigor mortis, Ronald figured that the remaining lawmen had nothing to lose. It had only been a few hours, though, since their pursuit westered off, and their horses were only well more muscled forms in the distance. It was possible that this was intentional, the lawmen hanging back so they could overtake Ronald and his companions when they decided to rendezvous. But he was tired, so exhausted from the shootout and the 3 days' flight without rest, that he rode on towards the meeting place. The land flattened, except for the cyclopean rises of the mesas and man-shaped cacti. Cracks spiderwebbed through the dry earth, above which small and sharp shrubs thronged. Above that, the moon was nailed to the sky's black and white speckled flesh. Fatigue nipped at Ronald's heels. Even as he flew from the lawman and a death either from bullet or noose, Ronald struggled to keep his eyes open. The only thing that kept him awake, which frightened him too much to sleep, was the final, clear memory he had before the shooting started, of Lisbeth nearly out of her mind as she put a slug into that poor woman's chest, and the joy on her face as she did it. How could I have raised such a daughter? He thought. Before Ronald could delve too far into sorrow, he saw a pinprick of light ahead. There is a campfire about 2 miles out. It glowed from between two small mesas like a small red eye. Gathering his remaining strength, Ronald goaded his horse onward, faster towards that distant fire, and his two companions who had lit it. Near the opening was the bottom half of an oak tree where the upper half had begun to fossilize. There were 2 horses hitched here. Ronald knew their names, also knowing that they were plump farming steeds and not beasts accustomed to the wilds. He hitched his horse next to the other 2, then gave each a bite of carrot from his saddlebag. The opening between the mesas was veiled by a spread of high, thorny bushes so that the campfire peeked through between gnarled branches, but was cloaked for the most part. Ronald passed through the hidden entrance trimmed by his companions, set diagonally into the bush so that any passing riders would not notice it. He then passed into the opening, which was ringed by red and brown stone that folded upwards, forming a roof of rock where a single shaft of sky came. In the center of the place was the campfire, lit directly under the fissure in the ceiling, a place for the smoke to stream out. There Ronald saw 2 rucksacks lying open next to some bedrolls and a jackrabbit cooking on a spit. He walked forward, slowly looking around for his companions. "Paul, is that you?" a voice said from the shadows. Then there was a sharp mechanical crackle from a repeater rifle. Ronald knew the sound of that rifle and knew the most action it had seen until the slaughter in Raven Gulch was plinking tin cans in their farmland. Ronald knew the voice even more so. "Oh, Gene, my boy," Ronald said. He moaned as the figure emerged from the shadows, saw through tear-brimmed eyes as his son stood in the firelight. Ronald stepped forward and embraced his boy. They held each other tightly. Ronald whispered, "God, you're alive," over and over again, while Gene whispered, "Paul, I thought you wouldn't make it out." They held each other for a long time, but for Ronald, the time seemed too short. He would have kept hugging Gene if not for the smell of burnt meat in the air. "Oh, the rabbit," Gene sniffled. He wiped his nose with the back of his hand. During the massacre, Ronald saw the man Gene had become, who he wished he had been at the same age. But now, in the dim light with emotions running high, Ronald saw Gene as the small boy he had always known. While Gene took the rabbit off the spit, Ronald stared out the cave's mouth. He saw the dead tree where the horses were tied and a featureless stretch beyond. He said, "Your sister, did she make it?" "Yes, and she's doing fine," Gene said. "Physically, I mean." Ronald nodded. He thought about all those dead lawmen lying in Raven Gulch's main square. The sand below them was pasted in red. The 6-shooter's barrel still felt hot against his thigh. "Are you angry, Paul?" "Where is she?" Ronald asked. Gene took a sudden step forward. "Be easy on her. She had her reasons. It's about Nate." "She can explain it herself," Ronald said. He put his hands on his hips. Tell me where she'd gone off to, boy. Gene opened his mouth as if to argue, but sighed instead. He slumped his shoulders. At the creek, sir. Ronald started for the cave's entrance. Before he went through, though, the secret pass in the before he went through, Gene raised his voice from behind. I'm sure happy to see you, Paul. We thought you had. Before Gene could finish his last thought, what are we going to do? I love you, son, Ronald said. He passed through the dark claws of the bush and into the flatlands surrounding their little hiding spot. Stumbling towards the creek, body aching for rest, Ronald groaned into the stars and said a short prayer. Martha, if you're out there, please stay my hand. He never would have thought that their peaceful life would have taken them down this road. Even now, the hidden place he'd taken the children for fun since they were babes had become a place of refuge against the long reach of the law. Give me the words, Martha. Tell me what to say to her. He found the small dip in the earth, which ran in a curved line and ended in a narrow, shimmering flow of brackish water. She's our daughter, Martha, but I don't know who pulled the trigger on half the goddamn town. He stopped. Lisbeth was 100 feet ahead. She wore the same white dress, now stained down the front. Her boots were placed neatly along the edge of the creek. To Ronald, it seemed that Lisbeth skipped barefoot through the creek waters, getting her dress wet. But upon approach, he saw that Lisbeth wasn't skipping, but rather she waltzed across the creek with an invisible partner. Her eyes closed, mouth hummed a quiet tune, head tucked into a nothing shoulder, hair braided down her back, and her hands were loped over nobody's neck. Ronald also saw, his mind blackening, that Lisbeth's fingernails were still stained red. Thank you.
Thank you, Colton. Our next panelist is Audrey Leck. Audrey Leck is a senior at SHSU getting a major in English with a minor in creative writing. She spends her time reading and dreaming of those 3 days where the Texas heat gives way to the freezing cold.
Storytelling is one of the most important inventions in history, detailing our past, present, and hope for the future. Tales of the gods or warnings long forgotten. As such, creative writing is the moral obligation of those with the creative know-how and the gift of inspiration to pass along our stories. I myself use creative writing to allow my fantastical thoughts to have room to breathe. The Beacon at Sam Houston State University provides an outlet for those of us in the undergraduate programs to share our writing. I will be reading a creative nonfiction piece entitled Winter, a short story called Rainy Day, and a poem named Prophecy, all of which were written during my time here at SAM. Winter, nonfiction. Brisk and clean. With every breath, you inhale pure energy, and all the hurt melts in the cold. The air purifies your heart of all trouble, and you can't help but feel renewed. Each visible breath reminds you of the life you live. You watch the heavy blanket of clouds, hoping and dreaming of flurries. The subtle smell of burning wood brings a soft smile and fond memories. You feel the joy of a child, the slight sting in your face as rosy cheeks emerge from a burnless smile. Enjoy it, for it's gone too soon, back to the heat of summer. While it's here, laugh and let it slow down time for an endless winter's dream. Those who grow used to beauty learn to despise it, and shun those who, with childlike wonder, adore and greet it with joy. Life is too short to despise the amazing. Take heart and love the small things, like the bitter, beautiful cold. Rainy Day, short story fiction. Ash is in a rush. She doesn't like the rain. Her umbrella is pulled low like a shield, defending her from the onslaught of rain, covering most of her face. She's already frustrated that her shoes are damp. Sam is practically glowing. He has a slight skip in his step, finally excited for a reason to wear sweaters and rain boots. He tilts his head back and laughs as the raindrops dance across his face. Quickly glancing around the empty street, Sam kicks a puddle and spins around. Ash turns the corner, and Sam collides into her shrouded frame. Both of them fall onto the wet pavement looking dazed. Watch where you're going. I'm sorry, I was distracted. Sam. She recognizes him. Her face burns crimson with embarrassment. She quickly apologizes. A cold twinge courses through her. Sam, I'm sorry. It was my fault. I had my umbrella down. I wasn't paying attention. Ash, gosh, let me help you up. Sam blames himself instead. He reaches a hand out to help her up. She takes it and stands. Sam, honestly, it's fine. How have you been? Sam notices Ash is shivering from the windy rain. Why don't we talk over coffee? My treat. How could I resist an offer like that? As they walk in, the smell of pastries and coffee makes Sam take a deep breath, exhaling with a soft smile illuminating his face. The warmth and music create a calming, almost dreamy atmosphere. Even Ash appears to lighten, surrounded by the relaxed air. Sam notices her faint smile and chuckles to himself. His usually prickly friend could so easily melt into an easygoing person if given the right circumstances. Sam, you order. I'll find a table. Great, I'll meet you there with the drinks. Ash wanders around the whimsical shop while Sam goes over to the counter. The soft yellow walls are covered with pictures and shelves full of trinkets. Ash settles on a booth in the corner against the window. Sam comes over with a tray and 2 steaming mugs. He places the mug adorned with a flower in front of her. Alrighty, 1 piping hot cappuccino for Ash and a nice cup of hot chocolate for me. Also, I got us some fresh chocolate chip cookies. Of course you got hot chocolate. Is there a more Sam thing to do? His drink is piled high with mountains of whipped cream. Look, it's below 70 degrees. I get to celebrate fall. Sweaters, hot chocolate, and pumpkin pie for all, Sam expresses, clearly passionate about the subject. Ash eagerly takes a cookie while laughing at Sam for his out-of-season drink. Sam ducks his head, chuckling. He dramatically expresses his love for the overnight turn in the weather, flailing his arms about as Ash allows herself to relax into the conversation. I've missed you. We used to talk almost every day, Sam says, almost out of nowhere. Ash would be caught off guard if she didn't know him so well. Sam, we used to live together. There weren't that many people in the house to talk to. Ash looks at Sam's face and sees him deep in thought. His upper lip is covered in whipped cream. It's difficult for her to keep her calm facade as she slides him a napkin. I guess that's true, Sam says, as he snaps himself out of his train of thought as he takes the napkin to wipe his face. I should count myself lucky then, Ash. I can't imagine what life would be like if you hated me. He decided to take a risk. Well, we certainly wouldn't be having coffee together. Seriously, Ash. I don't even know why you gave me the time of day. This catches Ash off guard. You stopped. What? Confusion is written across Sam's face. His eyes are searching for an explanation, but Ash won't look up from her mug. Her fingers are drawing circles along the handle. You stopped. Freshman year, when you saw me drop my pencil. It's really stupid. You weren't even close enough to help, and it wasn't even important, but you stopped, and you gave me this look. And I don't know why, but it really stuck with me. Ash, Sam tries to interject, but Ash cuts him off. She's rambling on, her words tumbling and spilling out of her mouth. Each word leaves Sam yearning for a solid answer. Sam, just let me finish, please. I have wanted to say something for years, and I don't know if I'll ever get the nerve back if I stop now. You've always been so supportive of me, and I don't want to think about life after college when I might not ever see you again. These past few months without you have been hell. Ash, Sam, I love you. 3 simple words. Words with the weight of the world behind them, and suddenly, all of Ash's cards are laid out for Sam to see. She instantly regrets her outburst, her eyes growing wide as she backtracks. Ash wasn't ready for Sam to know how she felt about him. Ash, Sam, please. If you're going to turn me down, I don't know if I can handle hearing you say it. Just leave. I'd rather you walk out on me than hear the words I have been dreading for years. I care too much about you. I'm asking you not to break my heart. He stands. Ash is holding back tears. Sam walks to her side of the booth and takes her hands in his. The rain is tapping against the window and the music fades into the background. Ash, he finally meets her eyes, both brimmed with tears. He whispers back 3 little words. Prophecy, a poem. On the morn of blood and rain, just before the dawn shall break, the battle fought be all but lost, and those around will count the cost. As the morn twids bright again, the one shall rise above the plains. As the blood begins to shed, and the terror turns to dread, men abandon hope and die, the one shall stare the dark in the eye. Below the ground begins to crumble, the fight divided amongst the rubble. Shouts of death will ring out, fallen men lie all about. The one shall take their final stand, just as the darkness shall ascend. With scepter in their righteous hand, shall they begin the battle's end. The soldiers fight with strength anew, with hope to see the battle through. With the turning of the tide, vanquish they the final vice. No longer shall the fear reign all, and they shall cause the darkness fall. Peace once more brought to the land, those around exalt hand in hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. And our final panelist is Andrew Huffmeyer. Andrew Huffmeyer was born early in the summer of 1999, and it has all been downhill since then. He discovered his passion for writing during his junior year of high school, due in large part to his English teacher. He lives in Huntsville, Texas, and attends Sam Houston State University. He drinks too much coffee and writes too little poetry.
Thank you all for coming and being patrons of the arts. The niche we inhabit as creative people in society feels like it is always shrinking. And in the last few years of disease, political and civil unrest, civil war, and general uncertainty, it seems as though we as a people are turning still more away from contemplative and cathartic art and more towards knee-jerk reactions of news outlets, the fear-laden speech of politicians, and the dubious moralistic role models that we have for celebrities. We have forgotten the cure to our malaise, the antidote to the dread fear that gnaws at our minds. We have forgotten the arts. The arts, and poetry more specifically, have always had a way of lifting my spirits out of the murk of my petty problems, so that my soul might lay in the sun that all of our souls long to bask in. When I am pulled into that glorious light, I feel connected with and embraced by the vast spirits of humanity, going back hundreds, if not thousands of years. They surround me and smile and hold me in the warm glow of that communal afternoon sun, and I can stand to keep going. I don't know if my work could ever hope to do that for someone else, but I'd like to think that it could. And I will keep creating so that, perhaps, one day when someone is stuck in the mire of their life, my work will pull them out, dust them off, and warm their souls with compassion. I will be reading several poems, Man in the Moon and Thank You, which are both featured in our on-campus literary journal, The Beacon. I will also be reading Dinner in the Chicken Pen, I Saw a Flat Frog, and Modern Art, which represent my ongoing research in poetry. Man in the Moon. Oh, that I could be the moon, that ball of pearly luminescence filled with dying fire, that my light might shine and dazzle your eyes, that my mystery might slake your hunger for the unknown, that you might gaze upon me and sigh. Thank you. I am an empty cup thrown from the window of a moving car. How desolate, you say, I must feel to be discarded like the trash I am. But I had meaning. For a brief time, I did what I was meant to do. And now I lay in an indeterminate ditch where I will remain forever, because plastic does not decompose. Dinner in the Chicken Pen. I once saw a man, grizzled and tan he was. He stood as men stand over the birds beneath him. The heat of the day beat down in mid-May onto the barren, pecked clean clay. The fowl gathered to him. He scooped from his pail, scraps of meat pale, they were cut from his evening meal. Their flesh returned to them. I saw a flat frog. I saw a flat frog on the road today. He lay unobserved in a heap of leaves. I wondered aloud, for whom did you die, and who will mourn you? He gave no answer. Once again, I asked, for whom did you sing when the moon rose high? His flat mouth stayed still. I knelt, and again, where did you wander? Which pond was your home? His feet never twitched. I needed to know. When you were breathing, did you love each breath? Did you fear your death? Still, he was quiet. Flat on the concrete, dry in the sunlight, a loose autumn leaf. Modern art. I am the piece that today garners crowds, that today draws eyes, that today is good. I am the dichotomy, the intricate and the intrinsic, the obvious and the obscure, the plain and the pretentious. I am the art that tomorrow is forgotten, that tomorrow is put away, that tomorrow gathers dust. And so I will dip my form in filigree and be beautiful for one last breath and be worthy for one last night. Thank you.
Thank you so much, panelists. Now we will have a brief Q&A. So I'd like to begin this Q&A with this question. Why is creative writing so important as a discipline?
You asked this question and I'm reminded of the quote from Ezra Pound where he essentially says that poets, but creative writers, in more general terms, are the antenna for a society, and that they sense things shifts way before the rest of the body would. And he goes on to expand on that in saying that as a society tends to slip more towards chaos, let's say, the poets and the writers feel this way before anyone else and send up the red flags. And I think that's pretty important.
Creative writing, as I said, is our history and our future. We can see warnings in the writings of past, and we give warnings for the future. We write about what is important to us and what is important to our society. And as such, writing is crucial for society to function.
There's one, really practical use for creative writing that is important for both the reader and author itself. It's a form of escapism. When you're reading a book or writing a book, writing a story, you don't have to worry anymore about bills or your day-to-day lives. And it just kind of goes to it. It's a form of telepathy, like like Stephen King had said, and it's therapeutic, and you no longer have to worry about real life issues. And creative writing, it's more intimate than film, it's more intimate than plays or anything like that, and you can experience firsthand love and grief and death without the pain of that.
Why do you, as students and artists, study creative writing at CM Houston State University? Audrey, go ahead.
For me, creative writing, it's crucial for escapism, for practicality's sake, for the fact that my brain never stops moving, is always creating scenarios. I have to write them down. And writing has always inspired me. There are authors that have always inspired me, and I hope to do that for someone someday.
Let's go Colton and then Andrew.
I think one important reason to consider is just this, like the small class sizes here at SAM, or just kind of going into what I'm saying is relationships. You have to build close relationships with your peers, with your professors, with the faculty, because you can't be a creative writer and not have relationships with people. It's what kind of fuels writing. It fuels what goes in your character. It fuels your words. And, at SAM, there is a lot of valuable relationships that can be built with other writers, readers, and just literature lovers in general.
I study because there's only so much you can learn from reading books on writing and reading actual writing. I study because there's so much that other people have to say and other points of view that I can learn from that can help inform my writing. And writing is it's like performing an activity like a sport. It's you're only as good as you practice, and you've got to practice all the time. And the best way to practice is with other people.
Great. Why is publishing in a literary magazine and an in-house literary magazine like Beacon so important to you as undergraduate creative writers? Yeah, Colton, go ahead.
I just think it serves as the final testament of just how hard you work on things. Before creative writing, I, worked with my hands a lot, and it was always so satisfying when you're building something or, whatever, that you see what you made before you. And I think that's really important to the process of being a creative writer, is to see what you write, in a published format. And because it's so valuable to do that, because other people can see that, and it kind of makes a river of thought rather than a stagnant pond of just everything you've written and nobody can really see it.
Andrew?
The Beacon was important to me because before anyone suggested that I submit to it, all my poetry, all my stories were just these fun little doodads that I had written down in a journal somewhere, and I didn't think I'd ever do anything with them. I didn't think I should. I didn't think it was good enough, but it gives me an outlet to say maybe my stuff is good, maybe it is worth putting out there, and it gives me hope. And I think it does that for a lot of people.
As someone who is taking publishing classes, the actual practice of publishing in the real world seems daunting. And I think going through the smaller version of it through the Beacon and through the editing process with the people who are in charge of it was really helpful to see like a smaller, watered down version of the real thing. And like Andrew said, to show that, our work is worth looking for bigger expanses, bigger ponds to publish in. And I think that's important for the students in the English department here at SAM.
Perfect. And so this is my last question. What inspires you as an artist and creative writer? Audrey, go.
Honestly, everything, anything. We kept a journal in one of my poetry classes where we just wrote down something every day that we thought could inspire us for a poem later. And literally the lines I have in there looking back, some of them are just like, oh, the leaves are pretty today. And it's just like random things can inspire us. And I think that's really special in a way that anything in the world can do that.
What inspires me? I wish I could tell you, because a lot of what I consider my very best work, I'm laying in bed and I'm struck by a thought, and I pull my phone out and I type it up, and then I go to sleep and I wake up in the morning and I edit it into what it becomes. And I think that while that can be a very juvenile view of how the creative process works, I think there is a certain form of a untouched creative consciousness that is inherent in humans, and I think that can show through in things like creative writing and poetry and music and other things.
That's a question that's really hard to answer. To be completely honest, I don't really know what inspires me. Usually what happens is I'll be doing something pretty mundane, like making a cup of tea or a bowl of cereal, and then I get this idea and I fall into this obsessive spiral until I get it all written out and worked on and all that. And there have been plenty of times where, I've been driving on the highway and I get an idea. I turn the radio off and just sit there and think and drive like a, it just, I don't know where it comes from, but I'm glad that it hasn't left yet.
That is a perfect way to end this panel. So thank you for attending this important panel featuring reading from Beacon. We thank all of our panel participants, and we do encourage those watching to stop by the English department to pick up a copy of Beacon to continue to read the works of these panelists and all of the writers featured in Beacon. Thank you very much.